Commander Vex-9 pressed his taloned appendage against the pulsing neural interface, his four eyes narrowing as the holographic display materialized before him. The crimson glow of the Dominion flagship's command center cast eerie shadows across his scaled features. 7 billion humans. Gone. Wiped clean from their pathetic blue marble of a planet in what the High Council had dubbed Operation Final Harvest. Satisfying, he hissed, mandibles clicking with amusement. Though I must admit, Vex-9, watching their cities burn was almost anticlimactic. Fleet Admiral Crix-8 floated beside him, her bioluminescent patches flickering with what their species considered laughter. Oh, come now, Commander. You sound disappointed. 7 billion sentient beings reduced to cosmic dust in a mere 72 standard cycles. That's got to be some sort of galactic record. Perhaps. Vex-9 mused, scrolling through the casualty reports with casual indifference. But these humans, they barely fought back. Where was their legendary stubbornness? Their supposed ingenuity? All those tales from the Outer Rim colonies about human tenacity were clearly exaggerated propaganda. The bridge crew of various alien species continued their duties, the soft hum of advanced technology mixing with occasional chittering communications. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Earth's major population centers had been systematically obliterated using quantum disruptors, leaving only scattered rural settlements and a handful of underground facilities. The planet's military infrastructure had crumbled within hours. "Sir," squeaked Ensign Nock 3, a diminutive slug-like being whose species served as communication specialists, "we're receiving multiple distress signals from the remaining human settlements. Standard surrender protocols, requests for mercy, the usual pathetic pleading." Crix-8's patches brightened with cruel amusement. How delightfully predictable. Patch 1 through, Ensign. Let's hear their desperation firsthand. The communication crackled to life, filled with static and the unmistakable sound of crying children in the background. A human voice, broken and exhausted, filled the bridge. "This is Mayor Patricia Thompson of Haven Valley. We surrender unconditionally. Please, we're not soldiers. We're just farmers, teachers, shopkeepers. We have children here. For God's sake, just tell us what you want." Vex-9 leaned back in his command throne, savoring the moment. How touching. Patch me through to her. The connection established, he spoke in perfect, albeit heavily accented English. "Greetings, Mayor Thompson. I am Commander Vex-9 of the Galactic Dominion. Your surrender is noted and irrelevant." "Please," Thompson's voice cracked. "We'll do anything. We'll work your mines, serve your empire, whatever you need. Just spare the children." "Oh, my dear human," Vex-9 replied, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "You misunderstand our intentions entirely. We don't need slaves. We don't need servants. We simply needed your planet's resources, and your species was, shall we say, cluttering up the real estate." A long silence followed, broken only by muffled sobs on the human end. However, Vex-9 continued, "I am not entirely without mercy. I'll give your little settlement exactly 1 standard hour to make peace with whatever primitive deities you worship. Consider it a final courtesy from a civilized species to a barbaric one." He cut the transmission with a decisive gesture, the silence on the bridge almost reverent. Crix-8 drifted closer, her bioluminescent patches now pulsing in approval. "Beautifully handled, Commander. Cold, efficient, and just enough false hope to make their final moments truly exquisite." "Thank you, Admiral. Though I confess, part of me hoped they'd show more fight. The intelligence reports suggested humans were capable of remarkable violence when cornered. Instead, we got this." He gestured dismissively at the communication console. Tactical Officer Grok 5, a massive boulder-like being whose species specialized in warfare, rumbled from his station. "Commander, preliminary scans indicate several heavily fortified installations remain operational, underground complexes, mostly. Should we investigate before final sterilization?" Vex 9 waved a dismissive appendage. Probably just military bunkers full of primitive nuclear weapons. Nothing that could threaten our shields. Proceed with the final phase. Grok 5. Let's finish this tedious business and move on to more interesting conquests. But even as he spoke, something nagged at his tactical mind. The human surrender had been too easy, too complete. In his 3 centuries of conducting galactic conquests, he'd never encountered a species that gave up so thoroughly after losing only their major population centers. Most civilizations fought to the bitter end, throwing everything they had at their conquerors in desperate final stands. Ensign Knock 3. He called out, "Run a comprehensive scan of those underground installations. I want to know exactly what the humans are hiding down there." "Aye, sir," the slug-like communications officer replied, tentacles dancing over his console. "That's scanning now." "Sir, these readings are unusual." "Define unusual, Ensign." "Well, sir, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They're not nuclear, plasma, or quantum-based. They're something else entirely. Something we've never encountered." Admiral Crix 8's bioluminescent patches dimmed slightly, a sign of unease among her species. "Commander, perhaps we should investigate more thoroughly before proceeding with final sterilization." "Nonsense," Vex 9 replied, though his voice carried less certainty than before. "What could a primitive species like humanity possibly possess that could threaten the Dominion fleet? Our shields could withstand their most powerful nuclear weapons without so much as a fluctuation." Grok 5's massive form shifted at his station. "Sir, I'm detecting movement in the largest underground complex. Massive energy buildups. But the signatures they're not matching any known weapons systems." "On screen," Vex 9 commanded. The main display showed an aerial view of what appeared to be an unremarkable stretch of wilderness in what their maps indicated was formerly known as Alaska. Snow-covered mountains and dense forests stretched as far as their sensors could penetrate. Nothing appeared threatening or even particularly noteworthy. "There, sir," Grok 5 indicated with a massive digit beneath that mountain range. "The readings are off the charts." As if summoned by their attention, the mountain began to move. No, not move. Open. The snow-covered peak split apart like a massive mechanical flower, revealing a yawning chasm that seemed to descend into the planet's core. From within that darkness, something vast and metallic began to emerge. "What in the name of the 7 hells is that?" Crix 8 whispered, her bioluminescent patches now flickering rapid patterns of fear. The thing rising from the mountain was unlike anything in their extensive databases of galactic military hardware. It wasn't sleek like Dominion vessels, nor crude like most primitive species' attempts at spacefaring technology. It was something else entirely, ancient, purposeful, and radiating a sense of barely contained violence that made even Vex 9's battle-hardened nerves twitch. It's massive," Ensign Knock 3 squeaked. "Larger than our dreadnoughts. Energy readings are climbing exponentially." "Sir, I don't think this is standard human military technology." As they watched in growing unease, more mountains began opening across the planet's surface. Dozens of them. Each one releasing something different, something wrong, something that made their advanced sensors scream warnings in languages their translation computers couldn't parse. "Sir," Grok 5's voice carried a note of professional concern that Vex 9 had never heard from the veteran warrior. "These aren't weapon platforms. At least, not like any we've ever encountered. The energy signatures suggest something far more sophisticated than anything humans should be capable of producing." Vex 9 felt his confidence wavering for the first time in decades. "Explain, tactical officer." "Sir, these installations appear to predate human civilization by several millennia. The construction techniques, the materials, even the underlying physics seem to operate on principles our science doesn't recognize." Admiral Crix 8 drifted closer to the main display, her patches now strobing in patterns of deep alarm. "Commander, I'm reading similar installations on every continent. Hundreds of them. How did our preliminary surveys miss something of this magnitude?" Because a new voice said from behind them, cold and utterly human, "We didn't want you to find them until it was too late." Every being on the bridge spun toward the source of the voice, standing near the main entrance, seemingly having materialized from thin air, was a human female. She appeared to be middle-aged, unremarkable, except for eyes that held depths of knowledge and experience that seemed impossible for such a short-lived species. Impossible, Vex 9 hissed, his combat claws extending instinctively. "How did you penetrate our shields, our security systems, our quantum barriers?" The human smiled, and that expression contained more genuine menace than anything Vex 9 had encountered in 3 centuries of warfare. "Oh, Commander, you have no idea who you've awakened." The alarms began screaming throughout the ship as security teams rushed toward the bridge. The human stood calmly amidst the chaos, seemingly unbothered by the dozen weapons now trained on her. "I am Dr. Elena Volkov," she said conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than standing in the command center of an enemy warship. "Though my colleagues prefer to call me by my operational designation, Baba Yaga." Crix 8's bioluminescent patches went completely dark, a sign of terror among her species. "That's impossible. Baba Yaga is a myth, a human folk tale about some witch in the woods." Elena's smile widened, revealing perfectly ordinary human teeth that somehow seemed far more threatening than any alien fang or mandible. "Oh, Admiral, you've made a fundamental error in your research. You assumed our stories were just stories. You never considered that some of our myths might be historical documentation." The security teams reached the bridge, but as they raised their weapons, something extraordinary happened. They simply stopped moving. Not frozen, not paralyzed, just stopped, as if they'd forgotten what they were doing, or why they were there. "Fascinating technology," Elena continued, examining her fingernails with casual interest. "The quantum disruption fields, bioneural interfaces, matter conversion arrays, very impressive for a young species. But you see, gentlemen, ladies, and assorted tentacled beings, humanity has been preparing for visitors like you for a very, very long time." On the main display, the things emerging from Earth's hidden installations were becoming clearer. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were something far more disturbing, constructs that seemed to blend technology with something organic, something that hurt to look at directly. "What are those things?" Vex 9 demanded, his tactical mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "Those," Elena replied with evident pride, "are what happens when you give a species that's been fighting itself for millennia a common enemy. You see, Commander, you made one critical miscalculation, which was, Bez, you assumed that killing 7 billion of us would make us weaker." Her eyes met his, and in them he saw something that made his advanced neural processors scream warnings. "Instead, you just removed our restraints." The largest of the constructs, the one that had emerged from the Alaskan mountain, was now fully visible. It resembled nothing so much as a massive mechanical spider, its legs stretching for kilometers, its body a writhing mass of technology and something else, something that their sensors insisted wasn't entirely mechanical. "We call that one Arachne," Elena said helpfully. "She's been sleeping for about 800 years, ever since we realized we might need her someday. A bit cranky when she wakes up, but nothing a few billion enemy targets won't cure." More constructs were emerging, a serpentine thing that seemed to phase in and out of visible reality, something that looked like a cross between a dragon and a cathedral, and dozens of others that defied easy description. "Impossible," Vex 9 repeated, though his conviction was rapidly eroding. No species develops technology this advanced while still fighting among themselves. It's evolutionary contradiction. "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Elena laughed, and the sound was somehow worse than any alien battle cry. "Fighting each other is exactly how we developed it. You see, when humans get really, really angry, we stop following the normal rules of physics." As if to punctuate her statement, the spider construct Arachne suddenly wasn't where it had been a moment before. Instead, it was directly above the Dominion flagship, its massive bulk somehow having traversed several thousand kilometers in the space between heartbeats. What we've built down there, Elena continued conversationally as chaos erupted around them, isn't just weapons. It's concentrated human fury, refined over centuries and given form. We call them the Old Guard, the things we built when we still remembered how to be properly, creatively vicious. Grok 5 was frantically working his tactical console, but his massive digits were trembling. Sir, the construct above us isn't registering on any of our targeting systems. Our computers insist it doesn't exist. That's because it doesn't. Elena explained helpfully, not entirely. Arachne exists in the spaces between what's real and what should be real. Human imagination given physical form and a really, really bad attitude. The lights on the bridge flickered as something vast and metallic scraped against the flagship's hull. Through the viewports, they could see glimpses of the construct's underside, a writhing mass of mechanical components that seemed to move with organic fluidity. Now then, Elena said, settling into what had been Admiral Crick's 8's chair with casual authority, let's discuss the terms of your surrender. Vex 9's mandibles clicked rapidly, a nervous habit his species displayed when facing imminent death. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd spent the last 72 hours orchestrating the extermination of billions, and only to find himself on the receiving end of an apparently superior force. Surrender? He managed, his voice carrying far less authority than it had moments earlier. We are the Galactic Dominion. We don't surrender to primitive backwater species. Elena tilted her head, studying him with the detached interest of a scientist examining a particularly fascinating insect. Primitive. Oh, sweetie. You just committed genocide against the species that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction when we still thought the sun revolved around our planet. Do you have any idea what we're capable of when we're not holding back? Above them, Arachne's mechanical limbs were doing something that made their ship's hull groan in protest. The sound was rhythmic, almost musical, as if the construct was tapping out some ancient tune against their armor plating. Sir, Ensign Knock 3 whispered, his slug-like form now a sickly pale color. I'm receiving communications from the rest of the fleet. Every ship is reporting similar visitors. Crick's 8's bioluminescent patches flickered weakly. Humans, sir. They're appearing on every vessel simultaneously. Our quantum barriers, our security protocols, our isolation fields, none of them are stopping the infiltration. Elena nodded approvingly. Oh yes, we've been working on that little trick for quite some time. You see, when you spend centuries figuring out how to kill each other more efficiently, you tend to develop some interesting workarounds for inconvenient things like physics. The main display flickered, showing feeds from other ships in the Dominion fleet. On every bridge, in every command center, humans were appearing as if they'd been there all along. Some were old, some young, some wearing clothes that seemed to belong to different historical periods entirely. Allow me to introduce my colleagues, Elena said with evident pride. The man in the 19th century military uniform on your dreadnought Void Render is General Marcus Steele. He's been dead for about 200 years. But death is really more of a career change in his case. The woman in the pilot's jacket on Stellar Crusher is Captain Victoria Hayes. She went down with her fighter squadron over the Pacific in 1943. But we found ways to extend employment contracts. Vex 9 felt his cognitive processes struggling to parse what he was hearing. You're claiming to have recruited the deceased? Recruited is such a limiting term. Elena mused. Let's say we've offered them new career opportunities. You see, Commander, when humans die in service of protecting others, we don't just let that experience go to waste. We preserve it, refine it, and when the time comes, we give it teeth. The display showed General Steele calmly walking through what appeared to be a heavily armed security checkpoint, the alien guard simply stepping aside as if he belonged there. Captain Hayes was examining a flight control console with professional interest, occasionally nodding approval at the alien engineering. How is this possible? Grok 5 rumbled, his massive form now showing visible stress fractures in his rocky exterior. The dead cannot return. It violates fundamental universal laws. Your universal laws, Elena corrected gently. You've been operating under the assumption that reality has consistent rules. But humans have never been particularly good at following rules, even cosmic ones. She stood from the Admiral's chair and walked to the main view screen, her reflection overlaying the image of Earth below. More constructs were emerging from hidden installations. A massive metallic wolf that seemed to be made of living shadow, something that resembled a fusion of airship and jellyfish drifting through the upper atmosphere, and a geometric structure that hurt to look at directly. We call that one Fenrir, she said, indicating the shadow wolf. Norse mythology. If you're familiar with human cultural references, the wolf that devours worlds seemed appropriate, given the circumstances. Fenrir was moving through space without any visible propulsion, its form shifting and changing as it approached the nearest Dominion vessel. As they watched, it simply absorbed the ship, not destroyed, not conquered, absorbed. The massive dreadnought vanished into the wolf's shadow form, as if it had never existed. My God, Crix 8 whispered. What did you do to our people? Oh, they're fine, Elena assured her, mostly. Fenrir doesn't kill, he just relocates. Your crew is now experiencing what we like to call educational imprisonment. Think of it as a very intensive cultural exchange program. More ships were vanishing into various constructs. The jellyfish airship hybrid was surrounding vessels in what appeared to be soap bubbles, then drifting away with its prizes. The geometric structure was doing something that their sensors refused to process, simply marking the affected ships as error, does not compute. This is impossible, Vex 9 repeated, though his protests were becoming increasingly mechanical. No single species could develop technology this advanced while maintaining such primitive social structures. Ah, but that's the beauty of it, Elena laughed. We didn't develop this technology. We discovered it. You see, the universe is full of things that used to be, things that might be, and things that definitely shouldn't be. Humans have always been very good at finding those things and making friends with them. She gestured to the view screen, where new constructs were still emerging from Earth's hidden installations. That cathedral dragon hybrid? That's something we found in the spaces between dimensions back in 1347. Took us about 600 years to figure out how to feed it properly. The singing crystal fortress? We pulled that out of a collapsed star in 1823. And that thing that looks like it's made of pure mathematics? We borrowed that from a civilization that forgot how to exist about 10,000 years ago. Borrowed? Grok 5's voice was barely a whisper. Well, they weren't using it anymore, Elena replied with a shrug. Humans are excellent recyclers. We never throw anything away that might be useful for protecting our home. The communication console crackled to life with transmissions from across the Dominion fleet. Panic, confusion, and increasingly desperate requests for orders filled the bridge with overlapping alien voices. Fleet command to all vessels. Report your status immediately. This is Void Render. We have unknown entities on all decks. They're not hostile, but they won't leave. Star Crusher requesting immediate backup. Our weapon systems are responding to human commands. Dark Wing to Fleet Command. Our engines are spelling out words in your language. Request translation for you. Started it repeated in thrust patterns. Elena listened to the chaos with evident satisfaction. Oh, that's Captain Hayes. She always did have a sense of humor, probably writing surrender demands and exhaust contrails by now. What do you want? Vex 9 finally asked, his tactical mind recognizing defeat when it was staring him in the face with 7 billion counts of genocide. Want? Elena's expression became thoughtful. That's an interesting question, Commander. What do we want from the species that just murdered 7 billion of our people? What would be appropriate compensation for wiping out nearly our entire civilization? She walked closer to him, and Vex 9 found himself unconsciously backing away from a human female who couldn't have weighed more than 60 kilograms. Here's what we want, she said, her voice taking on a tone that made the bridge's environmental systems whisper warnings about dropping atmospheric pressure. First, you're going to return every human colony ship you've destroyed, every human world you've conquered, and every human being you've enslaved over the past 5 centuries. That's impossible, Vex 9 protested. Many of those actions occurred decades ago. The people are dead. The ships are scrap metal. Did I mention that humans are very good at recycling? Elena's smile was becoming distinctly unnerving. Death is surprisingly negotiable when you know the right people. And destruction. Well, time is more flexible than most species realize. As if to demonstrate her point, the view screen flickered and suddenly showed images of human settlements that had been destroyed years earlier. But they weren't ruins. They were intact, thriving, filled with people who should have been dead for decades. How? Crix8's voice was barely audible. The constructs you see emerging from Earth aren't just weapons, Elena explained patiently. They're also temporal anchors, reality stabilizers, and probability adjusters. And we've been very busy the past few centuries, setting up contingencies for exactly this scenario. The images on the screen showed human children playing in parks that had been bombed to rubble, human scientists working in laboratories that had been vaporized, human families living in cities that existed in multiple timelines simultaneously. Second, Elena continued, you're going to provide us with a complete database of every species the Dominion has conquered or destroyed. We're going to need their locations, their cultural information, and their last known populations. For what purpose? Vex 9 asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Oh, we're going to bring them back too, Elena said cheerfully. Humans don't like bullies, Commander. We're going to undo every conquest, reverse every genocide, and restore every civilization you've destroyed. Think of it as cosmic community service. That would destabilize the entire galactic political structure, Grok 5 protested. Yes, Elena agreed happily. Won't that be fun? A galaxy where civilizations develop naturally instead of being crushed by aggressive empires. Revolutionary concept, really. The communication console was now broadcasting surrender messages from across the Dominion fleet. Ship after ship was reporting that their human visitors had taken polite but firm control of all major systems. And third, Elena said, settling back into the Admiral's chair, you're going to help us build a very special monument. What sort of monument? Vex 9 asked with growing dread. It's a memorial to the 7 billion humans you murdered today. We're going to need every ship in your fleet, every base in your empire, and every resource in your treasury. We're going to build something that will remind the galaxy that humans remember everything, forgive very little, and really don't like being extinct. The view screen now showed the Dominion flagship from the outside, surrounded by constructs that defied easy description. Arachne had been joined by dozens of others, creating a web of impossible technology that seemed to stretch across space itself. You're talking about the complete dissolution of the Galactic Dominion, Vex 9 said, his voice hollow with the recognition of absolute defeat. Oh no, Elena corrected. We're talking about evolution. You see, the Dominion was based on the idea that might makes right, that superior technology justifies conquest and genocide. We're going to introduce you to a new concept, community. She gestured to the view screen, where more human settlements were appearing, not just restored but expanded. Humans were working alongside aliens who had supposedly been extinct for centuries, building cities that incorporated technologies from dozens of different civilizations. The new galactic community will be based on cooperation rather than conquest, Elena explained. Every species will contribute their unique strengths, their knowledge, their perspectives, and the humans will provide the security. Security? Crix8 asked weakly. Oh yes. Elena's smile was radiant with anticipation. We're going to make sure that nobody ever again decides that genocide is an acceptable solution to resource competition. The constructs you see around Earth? Those are just the ones we've been keeping in storage. Wait until you see what we build when we're not holding back." The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of technology and the increasingly desperate communications from the crumbling Dominion fleet. "So," Elena said, standing and brushing imaginary dust from her unremarkable human clothing, "those are our terms. Complete surrender, total reparations, and enthusiastic cooperation in building a better galaxy. Oh, and one more thing." "What?" Vex 9 whispered. "You're going to apologize. Every single one of you, to every human settlement, every human family, every human child. You're going to explain what you did, why you did it, and what you're going to do to make sure it never happens again." She walked to the bridge's main exit, pausing to look back at the assembled alien officers. "And if you think that's unreasonable," she added, her voice carrying depths of menace that made advanced alien neural processors whimper warnings, "just remember that we're the species that turned our children's bedtime stories into weapons of mass destruction. Imagine what we'll do with our revenge fantasies." Elena Volkov, also known as Baba Yaga, walked out of the bridge as calmly as she'd entered, leaving behind a command crew that was rapidly coming to terms with the fact that they'd just learned the difference between conquering a species and awakening one. Outside, the constructs continued their work of reshaping reality according to human preferences. And across the galaxy, civilizations that had been extinct for centuries began to wake up, ready to reclaim their place in a universe where monsters were reserved for those who truly deserved them. The age of the Galactic Dominion was over. The age of Baba Yaga had begun.